All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. It looks like we have a quorum, so we're good. All right. Okay. Was it properly posted? All right. So we have a 21-point agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Frank, second by Ranish. Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Approved minutes of the December 2nd, 2022 public safety meeting. Any motion by Frank, second by McKee. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. All right, that brings us to item number 5, ad hoc referendum committee recommendation to public safety committee. So you're on that committee? Okay. So do you want to just walk us through I'm assuming everyone did, I did put in our folder both the report from the referendum ad hoc, which makes the recommendation to the public safety committee that we look into the possibility of creating a referendum question to separate our jail dispatch staff. So why don't you want to just give an overview?
Yeah, I will do my best. I was the meeting prior where some of those things happened. I wasn't there, but it is available online to watch. So the end result, after going over the numbers, seeing what the agencies could do, could cut, could change, and looking at what short-term borrowing could cover, some of the highway projects, some of the health and human services projects. Once those numbers were broken down, and in talking with, we had Washington County online, they gave a really good presentation about their referendum process in a couple of situations. It was determined to move on to to pass it on to personnel and finance, that to not do a referendum, at least in my opinion, not at this time. And for the April point, what the county and the committees choose to do beyond that to look forward is yet to be determined, I would say. So then at the previous meeting I wasn't at, but the discussion came up of what if the public safety looks at some of the 5-year plan, and one of those in that plan is separating the jail and dispatch. And then that would be a referendum question to increase staff to do some of that. It does not include a building project, which is part of the question. You know, what does that mean? What does that look like? I think that's a question that, if this committee chooses to move forward with that, that would be something that would come out in 2024. So it wouldn't be this year at all. It gives us a year to look at things and process and decide if that's a direction under public safety funding that we would want to do. That's short.
So we also have the strategic plan in which the Public Safety Committee has been tasked with evaluating the jail and what we would recommend as far as remodel versus build. But in my mind, we can't build until we have significantly paid off Pine Valley, which isn't until 2035, I believe, which means we have 13 years, 12 years? It's a long time that we need to live in the jail that we already have. And so I think, in my mind, actually, there's two questions. One is, what would be our long-term, would we recommend building a building, which I think that's probably a no-brainer, but we should still go through the process of thinking that. But how do we get through the next 12 years is really, I think, and one of the big concerns that the inspector brings up every time would be the limitations of how the physical setup of our jail, like the line of sight, it's a block style versus a central command with spokes of a wheel kind of thing. And we've talked about how if we did separate jail and dispatch, that's one of the ways that we could alleviate some of those concerns, just because then we would have jail staff that is just concerned with the jail and not having to handle the window, the public, and 911 dispatch. So I guess what I want to know from you is how, well, I guess let's hear from the sheriff. What were your thoughts when they called you up and said, hey, Sheriff Porter?
I guess in my opinion, I think it's important that we need to at some point separate the two. And with the radio project, that's why I think that kind of brought it to light more again. It's like, well, we're already going to be building a new radio system. What if we just flip the switch live from a new dispatch center? And I think they're two distinctly different skill sets, and I think having people that specialize in one or the other is very important to public safety.
It might help with our retention issues
It
as well.
also might help with the retention, because there are people who they are happy doing one or the other, but they really don't want to do both.
Right.
So I think it's an idea that's certainly worth exploring, because it's something would be a goal of mine, would be to separate the two.
And we aren't the only county in the state that has jail dispatch together, but one of very, very few. Is that correct?
Yeah, like 3 or 4. One of 3 or 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, like Iowa County, just a couple years ago when they built theirs, they separated their jail and dispatch in that process, but they built a new jail to accommodate that. Yeah, when emergency management moved out of downstairs, one of the questions I had when we were going through the radio tower is this the time to talk about separating? But of course, we're in the middle of there's no money. And so how could we possibly? So we're estimating 7, probably 8 staff. Would that include adding a jail administrator?
The estimate number I gave was 8. I would think that would also probably be a good time to try and get that jail administrator in. Now, I don't know that the jail administrator would be part of that number. Maybe, I think if you were going to go for the referendum, I would probably say we would probably want to add the jail administrator.
Just to remind everyone, we're the only county in the state that does not have a standalone jail administrator position. Currently, our sheriff serves as our jail administrator, which essentially means we just dumped it on him as a title because we have to have one, right?
Yeah.
By code.
Aaron does a lot of.
Right. Between the two of you, it's,
yeah.
So, I guess I'd be interested to hear. I mean, I guess I'll tell you my gut reaction. My initial reaction was, well, I think it's important we need to do this, and I think there's no question we need to move in this direction. Do I think that going to a referendum next year after we just went through this whole process and created a huge hoopla and then now are not doing it, and then next year we're going to say, oh, but here we want to do this and just add positions? I don't know. I feel like maybe 2025 would be better timing than 24. I don't know. I feel like the public might be a tad bit, I don't know what the right word is, upset that we essentially created a very large amount of angst, and probably our departments feel the same way. And now we're covering it within ourselves. I mean, I think it was an important process, and I think we learned a lot, and I think that it did make us identify some cuts that probably would not have happened without the idea of, whether or not we go to a referendum. So I think it was a very important process, and it accomplished a lot. But I just worry from a public perspective what the reception would be of going next year and saying, well, we covered all our bills, what we have, but now we want to add positions. That's just my initial thoughts. Any other?
I agree with your concerns there, and I want to mention from the referendum committee, from the beginning, this was a committee that was going to try to make that decision as a recommendation. And did it get? Was that the target? No, but we had to have that as a vision to be able to make the decisions, to ask the questions, to find out what it would take and what it was going to be. And
to be clear, I think the committee did an amazing job. You guys really made us focus in on where our issues lie, and so no one's
right. And I think from the public, some of the comments I've heard is they kind of wanted to see a referendum because then it was their choice. They had a vote in it. To which my comment has been, you still have that vote because you can still talk to your representatives. There's short-term debt questions that take 2/3 votes. There's all those things that can still happen, but that can come directly to the people that you elected. So, yeah, I think it was an eye-opening. I think if the county chooses at some point to go to a referendum, we have the basis now to work with, whereas before we didn't. So from that perspective, I don't know that there's a time date set on the recommendation that the referendum committee said, hey, public safety, are you interested in this? I don't think there's a set date, 24, 25. There's no set date on that at all. That's a suggestion, a direction brought to them.
Any other committee members want to comment? Bottom, it's a gray button underneath.
I would agree with what you are both saying, and it's also, this has, along with us and other counties, has kind of shined the light on the situation of this debacle of net construction. So I think our state legislators have said openly that they're going to review the process, hopefully to the poorer counties' favor. So I'm optimistic that maybe with that change, this discussion will lighten quite a bit.
Must be Barb's phone.
Hi, Barb.
That Barb. Okay, so I mean, part of our jail inspection discussion, we'll probably hit on some of this as well, but you know, in my experience in speaking with the jail inspector, he has some pretty serious concerns, although he has not written them in his report at this point. But he has some very serious concerns, and I think that's a very legitimate concern. And his comment was, if you have a person who, like if there's an emergency in one of the jail holding cells, you have you have two people on. So from what time to what time do we have only two people on? 10 at night.
10 to 6.
6 a.m. Okay, so from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., if something happens in a cell, you have one jailer who can go back, but the other person is not allowed to leave the dispatch center. So that person has to call patrol in from wherever they are, which could be Viola, could be Lone Rock, could be whatever. And they might sometimes do Richland Center if they absolutely had to.
City is usually the first one
City, yeah.
in that situation.
So anyway, it can be how many minutes until someone might be able to be here? What's the fastest someone could be here? 5 minutes?
In the door, 5 minutes.
Okay, so if one of our jailer personnel is in a cell or something happens and they go in and then they're in trouble, the other person can't leave dispatch. And I know we try not to talk about these things, but we just got to talk about it. And I mean, I know this is recorded, and so, but I'm just going to say it. So this is risky for our personnel. So I think that is the conversation that really speaks really clearly, in that having dispatch, they can never leave the room. I mean, there always has to be someone in there. They can never walk away. And so they would have to sit there while their partner has the potential to be in great distress, or we're just letting something happen in a cell because the other person can't go in to do anything until backup arrives. So then we potentially got citizen injuries, or, I mean, I don't know, are they allowed to go in at all? Like if an inmate was having a health crisis, are they allowed to go in without a second person?
They are trained not to go in without a second person.
So that means that our inmates also are at risk of, because we would have a potential of a minimum of 5 minutes before help could, before anyone could go in there to help. So to me and he did, that's the first time I've heard. I mean, I've only been to two closeout meetings with the jail inspector, but he spoke to that pretty long, for a long time this time, like that he really struggles with. He realizes that is something that previously was agreed to, either right when he first got started as the inspector or whatever. He's not happy that it continues to be the case that we have only two people on at night. and we have dispatch and jail together so that you don't have people focus solely on taking care of the people in our custody. So I do think it's an important question, and I do think that we need to go through the process of figuring out. It's just the referendum question is the part that I'm just not sure as far as timing and whatever. But I did plan on this year also talking about what improvements we could make in our current setup to get us through for the next 12 years. And one of them is separating jail and dispatch. So I think those conversations are going to be tied very closely together. Where do we go from here, though? I guess is my question. What is the committee interested in? Do you want me to look up? I mean, we kind of throw these numbers out of like we're the only one without a jail administrator, and we think we're one of like 3 or 4. But I could figure out for sure how many other counties have jail dispatch that's together. We could talk to Iowa County about what process they went through to separate because they just did it. I don't know if there's anyone else who just separated jail and dispatch. Referendum. But I mean, we know Iowa just did it because they just did it a year ago, year and a half ago, 2 years ago, whatever. So not very long ago. Yeah. So we can, we could bring their jail administrator in and talk about the process and how many, get a really good feel for how many persons, because their jail population is very, very similar to ours. I think he told me their average was about 28 or something, and that's pretty much, when we're not taking state ones, that's pretty much where we're at. So, so start there. I don't know what else would the committee like to kind of get a feel for before we.
I have a question for Aaron. Approximately how many hours a month do you think you spend on jail administrator time?
I guess it kind of really depend on if there is a lot of disciplinary issues in the jail. Anytime that an inmate has a fight or cause issues with the jail, I have to do a write-up for that disciplinary as they're put into segregation. So I mean, between working on policy and handle disciplinary issues, I mean, a week, I'd say at least 10 hours a week, I'd say.
Well, the reason I ask the question is, this is my vision. I envision a jail administrator as a uniform type administrator and not a suit and tie type. In other words, somebody that can be hands-on, be in a cell once a day or whatever, not just sitting in an office filling out reports. Because like you said, there's 30 hours a week that, I'm not against hiring somebody, but we need to seriously think about the job description and what it entails.
So they've already said that the jail administrator would have multiple hats. So like he would be would organize the court security, and I can't remember, you could say what, and transport.
Court security, transports, and then just like day-to-day management of the jail. So like Aaron said, he does the policy for the jail. He does the discipline reviews. And to some extent that won't end because Aaron does the reviews, discipline stuff now. I am the appeal process basically. So if they don't like something Aaron would do, it comes to me. So we're adding steps into that, I guess I would say is one aspect, but it really is, we have people already in the jail that are doing like sergeant, we have sergeants and we even have, just jailers who are doing more than what they probably should be, and these are the roles. This is what that jail, like making the schedule, that kind of stuff.
And both of those jail sergeants mentioned retirement when I was in the room as well.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of experience walking out the door.
Yeah. So it'll be the
smart.
policy writing. It'll be the inmate discipline. It will be, jail rule review, stuff like that.
Hiring new employees.
Making sure things are happening. Right now we have paper logs to make sure that cell checks and cell searches are being done.
But this person would also be able to fill in if you have holes in your schedule as well. Wasn't that part of the idea?
Yeah.
Was if there's holes in the schedule, this person would be.
But it'll be overall oversight of what's going on in the jail, more than what writing. So.
Are you drinking lemon straight up? Oh. I thought that 100% lemon juice. I was like, wow, that's That's brave. All right. All right. So I guess I'll start gathering some information and we'll probably have this on the agenda every month just to kind of touch base and talk and whatever, figure out where we want to go with this. All right. I think you could also add jail evaluation. I don't know, we'll tie into that conversation also our conversation about building a new jail versus remodeling a jail versus whatever we're supposed to be. I'll think of the words later. I'll tell you later.
So
Okay.
I guess I would suggest that we come up with that list of what it looks like. If we're going to separate, we're going to need another room. We're going to need the telecommunications equipment moved. Just to come up with that list of what that is, that we can then come up with that cost idea. So I guess start dreaming first and get that list together so we can move forward.
I think coming up with a list of the possible places. I don't know that we have to be in the courthouse. Would dispatch have to be in the courthouse? Does it need to be physically located with you guys? Because I didn't know about the new building that you guys are in. You know, when you first were moving, we did have a brief discussion about would that be something. But so that's the kind of things we can throw out there to see if there's any way or what our options are as far as space for that. Okay, so moving on. Corner updates. Anything?
Yes, I dropped that in the folder last week. So he sent me what looks like kind of just a year-end report. 130 calls in 2022. 5 suicides, 7 accidental deaths, 2 motor vehicle accidents, 1 pedestrian versus car, 1 UTV drowning, 2 motor vehicle drownings, and 1 fall.
So we had one UTV and 2 cars that went in the water?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. One was early or late winter, and
Like ice fishing or something?
and then the other vehicle was he drove off the road and went into the Mill Creek. So and then the other one was less than a month ago. So zero overdose, but 2 suspected that are pending. 45 hospice cases. The youngest decedent was 23, oldest was 100, and average age is 77. 118 cremations for the year, 12 traditional burials. And he did give me some 2021, what it looked like compared to 2021, but that's in the report. And he says best wishes for a happy and healthy 2023.
All right. Thank you. All right, that brings us to, excuse me, item number 7, Circuit Court Judge updates and comments. Could be on the top. Sometimes it's on the bottom.
Thank you. All right. I'm sitting in the corner because I've been ill. I feel fine today, but I thought I'd
Keep your
spare
choice to yourself.
everyone potential exposure by trying to minimize that and sit in the corner. As everybody knows, probably our biggest issue recently has been the possible elimination of the assistant register and probate juvenile clerk position. Fortunately, that has been resolved. It is no longer, well, certainly since the referendum isn't going forward, it certainly won't be on the referendum, but it's also not being recommended as a cut. So we're very, very happy about that, obviously, and grateful. Unfortunately, there has been a collateral consequence to just the discussion, as Ms. Lau has indicated previously, to just talking about eliminating the position. We have lost our very wonderful assistant juvenile clerk, assistant register and probate, Veronica Olson, which is terrible news. The good news is, of course, that the DA has now picked her up as their legal secretary. So she has just simply gone across the hall. But I think it certainly underscores and should underscore the notion that even just discussing eliminating positions creates a real instability for every department that has been looking at possibly eliminating a position. For us, it is a real setback because now not only do we have to hire somebody new, but we have to train and get somebody up to speed in a position that requires a lot of specialized knowledge. There's a lot of technical training that goes into this. There's a lot of education about court processes. We have to find somebody who can deal with a lot of strong personalities, not just attorneys, but pro se unrepresented folks who are at pretty low points in their lives, and they bring a lot of stressful circumstances and situations with them. And so you can't just throw anybody into this position. And now Jenny is looking at not only hiring somebody, but finding somebody right for the position. And, you know, training for this kind of position takes months and months. Easily, I would say somebody is probably not comfortable in the position for upwards of a year. So that is very unfortunate. So we're moving forward. We're hopeful and optimistic, though, that we're going to find somebody who's going to be a good fit. So with that looming, it's been easy to kind of, I wouldn't say ignore, but put on the back burner another subject that's near and dear to my heart that hopefully we can talk about at some point here in the not too distant future, which is the potential elimination of the treatment court coordinator, which right now is under the auspices of Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services serves as the fiscal agent for the treatment court and has since its inception, which has been fine and actually has served a good purpose up till now. But Health and Human Services now has seen fit to put the treatment court in the category of potential elimination. Treatment court really is a court program. And so it's this, I don't even know if hybrid is the right word. It does, treatment court requires treatment and counseling for people who are suffering from substance abuse. And so we lean heavily on people who have the expertise to deal with these kind of issues. We need counselors, we need people who are bent that way. So to have the program involved heavily with Health and Human Services is important. But there's a whole other aspect to treatment court that I think is not understood by Health and Human Services necessarily, and is certainly not understood by the general public, and maybe not even by the county board in general. And so I think I would like to see more education and understanding of what treatment court is and why it's really important to the county, and how it contributes to things that are important to this committee, like, well, public safety, how it is, you know, courts cannot always effectively deal with things, people who find themselves in the throes of the criminal justice system because of addiction, because of substance abuse, and how it is that treatment court is an evidence-based, a tried and true and proven way to take people who otherwise just end up cycling in and out and in and out of the system and taking them and finding effective and long-term ways to reduce recidivism. And taking a program that we have spent 5 or 6 years working very hard to develop and to get into place and simply eliminate it seems to me to be a terrible travesty. And I think some of that is because folks don't really understand what treatment court is, in part. The other thing that I understand about treatment court, and I don't think I'm mistaken about this, is that I know that it is obviously funded in large part by a grant through the state. It's called the TAD grant, Treatment Alternatives and Diversion Programs. The county has had to match some of that grant, but most of that match has been in-kind money. So it hasn't been an actual outlay of money. My understanding is that the actual outlay from the county is very, very small. The last number I heard was that it was under $10,000 a year, which is less than what it looks like on paper. Those are things that I'd like to investigate and have a discussion about. And see if it really is worth trying to make the effort to save this program. So those are the things that are on my mind this month.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions if I could.
Sure.
So my first one is, how do other counties do it? Do other counties also go through DHH as part of is that pretty much a set standard?
I don't know that it's a set standard. I do think that some counties do run their program through Health and Human Services, but I know for sure that some counties do run the budget for treatment court through the register and probate. And I guess given where we find ourselves today, that is certainly a change that I would like to look into.
Okay, so having that on the register and probate side, or on the court side, if I can, is that too close? Having that person, is that too close because they're dealing more with treatment or more with the court side, in your opinion? That's the question.
Too close.
Too close to having the people that are in treatment court being overseen by the court, whereas right now, aren't they more overseen by Health and Human Services and that side?
No, I would say that's absolutely not true.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
And then does the Sheriff's Department deal with the treatment court side? Do you guys see any effects of that, or can you tell me?
So we have a person who is involved with all the treatment court, the meetings and all that. And then we assist in the random testing to make sure that the people involved are staying compliant with the program. So that's our involvement, yes.
Okay, I would be very good.
And from my perspective, we did this at the beginning for a number of reasons. We actually have 2 members of law enforcement on the committee. One is from the city and one is from the county. They only get 1 vote between the 2 of them, but to have a county person on, we have more in-kind program monies. So by having our investigator sitting in there, we actually get more counted for more in-kind, county in-kind funding. So I have 2 officers who, of course, get to speak, although there's only 1 vote, and having someone from the county helps us with our money obligations from the county, where we actually don't have to outlay monies. I have lots of thoughts about treatment court, but what I do know is the way treatment court considers recidivism is, let's say in an alcohol treatment court where we mostly have OWIs, high-level OWIs, felonies, is whether or not those folks have picked up any other OWIs. And these are people who drink and drive and have a history of this and have done this forever, and we have 0 recidivism for OWIs where we have new OWIs. We have had people who have come back to court with I think we had a theft of, I don't know, wizard fingers from Quick Trip or something like that, and maybe someone stole something small from another place. Those are not good things. Committing crimes are not good things, but from my perspective, and especially with respect to the alcohol treatment court, and very soon we're going to be able to see the ramifications in our drug treatment court, or our statistics, is not having people out drunk driving saves lives. Period. Stealing wizard fingers from Quick Trip doesn't really involve people living or dying. So from my perspective, it has been life-saving. From my perspective, it saves a lot of court time, space, effort, money. And from my perspective, and I'm certain that the sheriff would agree, if we don't have people committing new crimes, new OWIs, they're not sitting in the jail. Because if you're on an OWI 5, like we had someone recently who's sitting on a cash bond, they're sitting in our jail. They're sucking up space, they're sucking up time, and they're sucking up money. And those are things that we really can't afford to do right now if we don't have to. There's no reason to spend the resources on those things when we already have a program that has, at this point, and now we've been going for 5 or 6 years, 0% recidivism. And these are people I've seen in court all day long, forever. And so has the Madam Clerk, and so has the judge. So that's my position regarding treatment courts. We save a lot of money, and we save, which is more important to me, and I'm sure law enforcement. So that's what I have to say about treatment court.
When the grant was first written and Judge Sharp worked with, at that time, Health and Human Services Director, I think it was Patrick Metz, helped him write the grant. And they just, my understanding, it was kind of like, which budget are we going to put this in? Who's going to manage the money for it? And, Patrick was like, I will. And the judge was like, sounds good to me. So I don't think it was a thing of, well, this is so much Health and Human Services work, that's why Health and Human Services will manage the finances. It was a willy-nilly, yeah, sounds good. You got more people than we got. And it's more of the bookkeeping reasons, and that's it. Not the services, not how it runs. It is all what these guys have all explained. It's a court thing. It really should be in the court's budget. And, I guess I think that we should take a stab at doing the finances for it. We've written and managed other grants, and we know what treatment court is about. So if it's a thing where it would help preserve it, to get that transferred back over into the court's budget, and it would make more sense that way, I'd be all for that.
Madam Chair? Madam Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
I love the idea of the education component that the judge mentioned. I know nothing about the treatment court other than what I've heard, and I don't know how truthful some of the stuff is that I've heard. I do want to know about the effectiveness. I want to know about the recidivism. I want to know how long are people in this, who decides who will go. The substance abuse and alcohol abuse is countrywide. It's not just here. Has anybody else done something better? Are we at the top of no recidivism? Who decides who goes there? We need all this information, especially because some of the comments you hear in the community, they treat it as a joke, like, well, if I get caught, I'll just go to treatment court. And I don't know how it's decided, and so on. So I do think we do need an educational component to this.
All right, thank you.
If I could just quickly respond to that, we would be delighted to provide education if there was some format for that, to provide answers to those questions. I think that's a great idea, because I just think there's a great misunderstanding of what it is, how it comes about. I just very quickly, and I know we need to move on, but you know, it's a multidisciplinary approach. There's a team of people that administer the program. They come from law enforcement, probation and parole, treatment, the courts, you know, public defender, the district attorney. We all meet in a room every other week, and we discuss all of the participants and the future of the program. It's a very, very good thing. So, you know, if anybody has suggestions as to how we can provide that education to folks, we would welcome that.
I would suggest coming up with a written document that summarizes exactly what you just talked about, and then also I have found frequently asked questions kind of section to it helps a lot with when you hear those comments like what Supervisor Voice just said. You know, those are the kind of things that if she's hearing it more, other people are hearing it too. So, and you could present it to us, and then we can recommend that it go to the county board, and then you could have on the, you know, we could get you on a county board agenda where you spend, you know, 10 minutes really just describing the program and the importance of the program. That would be my recommendation. I do find having something written helps with county board education, just because, and then we can also put it on the county website for the public. That way it gives us the opportunity to have an educational piece out there to reference when we do get questions, especially as new county board members come on, then they, you know, they can reference that material as well. Supervisor Rogers.
Yeah, if, for educational purposes too, WRCO recently did a
Right.
morning show with one of the successful participants in the treatment court. So I don't know how far back there, you go to their,
They keep them for quite a while.
yeah, go to their morning shows, and I if you wanted, it was a good program, and I knew the participant too, so I learned a lot just listening to morning show, and Ron always does a good job.
Question. Okay. All right. Anything else from the circuit court judge?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That brings us to clerk of court updates.
Good morning. Did you all get the report I sent?
Yep. And your comments about
I forgot to send it on to Barb so it can be posted, and I'll do that. Of course. What questions do you have?
So bottom line, your budget is over, but your revenues are up. So
My
you're
revenues
way up.
are up much more than my budget is over.
Right. So
And my revenues all go to the general fund, so anybody who goes over can use them, and
so
so
do you
this year
think
that'll be me.
do you think attorney fees is this kind of be a kind of a continual pattern that they're going to be a further
Yeah,
increase,
and I'm
or
gonna, well, I knew that we were in the last, month or so, I knew we were getting hammered with them, and I had Tammy Wheelock run some reports one day. I'm like, I'm handing in attorney fees in the frequency and the amount of like, yeah, we're gonna go over on this. And I still think, I am on the attorneys all the time. I heard that an attorney the other day in the courtroom was joking that he would never want to work for me because he'd get fired because I'm a taskmaster, because I'm always on him about getting his bills in. And so I think that we don't have that much out there, but there's no way ever for me to know. But what I'm gonna study is whether part of the reason that we had so many attorney fees, particularly for adversary counsel, which is criminal cases this year, is because of the judicial transition. Because all of those cases, when they went from Judge Sharp assignment to Judge McDougall, and then maybe another judge had to get assigned because Judge McDougall couldn't or whatever, it lengthened those cases. The time frame from charge to disposition is longer. Court-appointed attorneys, Supreme Court rule dictates that they're paid $100 an hour. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to start figuring out the hours, and it's just like $100, $100. So the longer a case goes on, the more hours these attorneys spend. And so I'm hoping that this is an anomaly year, at least with the adversary counsel fees. Guardian ad litem, the attorneys and family cases, those always just about exceed what we tried to budget for them. But this year, the two things together, they're big ticket items, but the one that was more than it has been years before was definitely in the criminal cases. And whereas Judge McDougal was a public defender, it's not because people had her and then they got a court-appointed attorney, because they had her as a public defender, so then they got a different public defender, which is an expense the county doesn't pay for. So it's not just because of that. I really think it's because, there's, in a year of a judicial transition, criminal cases are just gonna take a little bit longer to dispo. So there's more billable hours. Do you think that might make sense?
I think that might be part of it. Part of it too is we're also trying to educate our attorneys to bill more often. In other words, present more interim bills so that the clerk isn't stuck with just these one-time huge bills. And so some of the bills I've seen anyway, these attorneys now are trying to catch up
Yeah.
to make them current and to get it done before the end of the year. So that could be part of sort of the glut of what we're seeing too.
So if that's true, then hopefully we won't see a lot of them lingering
Right.
in like January for 2022 bills. But I do know I've got a few of them on my desk now that I just pulled through signed orders yesterday. So, it's knowing that you're already over every one of those. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
But there's nothing you can do about it. What are you gonna do about it? Well, there is something we can do about it, and we do. We recoup the money from the parties, and then that's part of why the reimbursements, the revenues are so high. And I'm doing wage assignments left and right, which is just extra work, but work that's worth it, obviously. But just a lot of detailed work with collections and really trying to stay on people, and if they don't pay, getting them over to state debt collection as soon as possible and all of that.
And just
So-
reiterating that having Stacy available to be able to do that is so valuable. I mean,
Right.
making sure that we have enough staff so that she doesn't have to pick up the other duties of the clerks is just really vital in terms of her being able to focus on
Right.
recouping the money that's being laid out for these attorneys.
All right. Any other questions for the clerk? All right. That brings us to the probate department.
Oh, yeah.
Morning.
Good morning. So I just want to add just a couple things, because we've addressed a lot of things that on these issues already with the judge and with Stacy. So I too am over budget, and I do feel right now at this point in time I'm over budget 15,000. Every single line item for attorneys is over. So I was a little surprised, just to remind you a little bit on where it says JAL fees for chapter 48 and 938. Those are juvenile cases. So those are juveniles that have gotten in trouble, or most of them are children in need of protection and services again. So all of those children need a guardian ad litem to look out for their best interest. So those attorney fees are over. I do think, in addition to the length of the cases being longer, that we are going back to in-person. So for the last 2 years, we were able to do a lot by Zoom, or we were required to. And so not only, so they have court time in person, which is usually, a fair amount of time. They have mileage added. And so I think a lot of this is coming. We didn't see it the last 2 years. We weren't anticipating this because we've been doing it by Zoom. So there was a lot less time invested in these cases. The next one is chapter 51 and 54. Those are adult guardianships and juvenile guardianships. So anyone that's under a guardianship, I think there is a lot of dementia and things that require guardianships these days. I see those increasing. And again, those people get a guardian ad litem to look out for the best interest. So if somebody's petitioning for a guardianship on that person, there has to be an attorney appointed to make sure that, and there has to be doctor's reports, examinations by 2 physicians, reports submitted, and court cases. Again, those are back in person where they used to be done by Zoom. Then the adversary line, those are either, so let's say a person has a guardianship, but they oppose it. They feel like they do not need a guardian. Then they can oppose it and they get adversary counsel appointed. So the guardian ad litem looks out for the best interest. They may say you do need a guardian, but they don't want one, so they have 2 attorneys for that type of case. So again, I'm just trying to quickly remind you of why all these attorneys, and these are per statute, that this has to be appointed, is not at the discretion of anyone. So when we really don't have a choice in the matter on attorneying these, and I have asked too, we are not allowed to cap. We are not, because we can't, pull in their representation to that person at all. That the person appointed has to be able to fully represent that person. And sometimes you feel like it's a little much, but there's no way we can ask to cap that. So I just wanted to give you, a kind of an explanation on that. So I was surprised a little at how, because I'm going to have more come in January. I know it. I have more I haven't submitted. And so I guess our only thing is we are trying to recoup these. So keep in mind on these guardianships, many of the people are either under Social Security or Social Security disability. When the county gets involved in a guardianship, as petition is, so we are recouping at these people. And for some of these people, it's very hard to pay this back. So I also want you to be aware of that. We're asking people to pay back these attorney fees to people that is difficult. The same thing, if you're a parent that is involved in a CHIPS case and your children are in need of protection and services, you're already probably not in a great place in your life. And then we're asking them to repay this money back for these attorney fees for the guardian ad litem. So if there's 2 parents involved, they get to split that. But if there's only a single parent, that all of that guardian ad litem fee goes to that single parent. So I just wanted to, again, educate you on these are difficult emotional cases. And that doesn't even include the mental cases or any of those things that are involved. So, I try not to, sometimes I feel like I don't want to talk too long because your meetings are already long and stuff, but a lot of this stuff is very detail oriented and has to be accurate. And there's strict time constraints on all of this. So just
One question I have for actually for both you and for Stacy is, so did you guys increase your line item for fees for 2023 just to try to, I know you're always kind of guessing. You don't actually know what your fee. So you kept them, yeah. Right. Yeah. We may need to have a conversation with the administrator about when he says we can't increase it, or the finance or whoever, when we can't increase, but there are things that have to increase because we don't control them. And so that's, I think, a conversation we need to, because I don't want to create a budget that's not real. Like, that you're probably going to go over, then it's not real. Yeah. So I think that that's something we should focus on. Either I can bring the administrator into our conversations, one of our meetings, but that, because I think you guys have the same thing. I think there's several departments within this, under the purview of this committee, that it's not realistic to say 0% increases because we don't control some items. So I think we'll have that conversation. Okay. All right. Anything else from?
just a couple quick things.
Are you interviewing?
So we're gonna hopefully start interviewing next week. I am going to extend it. So we only got 3 applicants. Was over the holidays. So I'm gonna extend it 1 week
Try and get,
try and get some more applicants just because people are so distracted during the holidays that
Right.
might not be their priority. And on that note, just again, another reminder that we were anticipating not losing Veronica, so we didn't budget for the health insurance because she wasn't taking it, and again, Devin had not taken it. So that's a concern. I mean, we will probably have a month where no one will be in that position. So we'll save a little bit of money there, but again, the health insurance is not budgeted for, and we don't know if that person that takes the position is going to take it or not.
right.
Then the very last thing, just real quick, I will be reaching out, I believe, to you, Melissa, and to Marty Brewer. So the judge does want to reinstate 2 committees that have kind of fallen by the wayside. The first one is related to treatment court, somewhat is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. And then the other one is the courthouse security meetings. So
That'd be a good one. We haven't met.
so both of those meetings will be, I've talked to Clint a little bit about the date, and we're looking at implementing those starting now in January. So there'll be agendas. And so I just wanted to be, because things were done by Zoom, we have not had a courthouse security meeting in well over 2 years, probably closer to 3, to be honest.
I was on that committee before, and I've been on that committee since I started 5 years ago, and we've met once in the 5 years that I've been on. And I do think it's a good one. We need to have some conversations for sure.
So those will be forthcoming this month.
All right. Anything else from probate? Any questions? All right, that brings us to emergency management. Oh, I'm sorry, district attorney.
So I usually don't talk very long, and I'm not going to do today. I was trying to think how I was gonna approach this morning. As this committee knows, I've worked for years before we even passed Marcy's Law, which was a referendum at the state level, constitutional requirements for victims, for which if we do not provide, we will be sued. Talked about this a number of times. We have been in non-compliance. I know this is recorded. I don't care. We have been in non-compliance since Marcy's Law was passed. I have now had my victim witness supervisor and victim witness coordinator who is budgeted, and all that kind of things. I've had her for 3 days. Things have gotten so much better with our victims in 3 stinking days. 3 days. And here we are. So that's where we are. So that's all I know. Anyone have any questions?
That's good news.
Yeah, I
Very
did
good
get
news.
another thing from DOJ that I'm getting sued. So that's pretty exciting. That does take a crap ton of money. I wouldn't say money, time and effort by our victim witness person. But guess what? We have someone who can do the job. So I'm pretty excited about getting another one of those.
And
But-
when does Veronica start for you on?
She started
She's
3
just-
she
she's
started
just-
3 days
okay,
ago.
that's okay.
3 days ago, and this is what we've had now in 3 days.
Yeah. Okay.
So
All right. Any other questions? All right, so then we're moving, thank you. Then we're moving on to emergency management.
So I didn't prepare a detailed budget report for you because we're still working through the revenue process. Emergency management is funded by 2 grants, and we close out those grants with Wisconsin Emergency Management on the 19th of January. There's a workshop that I attend. We then submit all of our eligible expenses, and then I'll know exactly what we're going to get back in terms of revenue for that. As far as expenditures, we were the department was over budget by $1,681.68. The repairs to the truck was $3,064 more than what we have in that line item. There's $1,500 in there, so a set of tires for that truck will eat up $1,000 of that pretty quickly. So And there was, in the telephone line, there was budgeted 1,500, and there was a period of time where there was some, I think, invoices that should have been to ambulance and not emergency management, and maybe even to the sheriff's department. I don't know, but that needs to be kind of gone through because it put the telephone line item over by $1,600.
Okay.
So I need to work through that yet as
Okay.
well. In an attempt to try to stay under budget, there was $3,000 set aside for a mitigation project on Judge Hauk's property. And we were hoping to be able to partner up with all the other partners, but I had to hold back on that because we didn't have the money. So I guess the other point that I'd like to make, and I don't want this to come across disrespectful to the committee, to the ad hoc committee, because I know there was a lot of effort and work put into that. But if this is a document that's going to go to the public, I think we need to be cautious and careful about how we use words. And in there, particularly the section where it reads voluntarily reduce their budget, there was, for instance, Jenny's position and $16,000 for emergency management LEPC was listed in a category that was not voluntarily reduced by the committee. And I think that could put a really negative light on your departments, because I don't think there's ever a moment that Jenny said or I said we wouldn't voluntarily do whatever we could do to meet budget expectations, up to and including, don't give me a raise, we'll reduce conference fees, whatever. So again, I don't think there's anything intentional there, but that message gets sent out, and I'm not the only one that has felt this way. I know some folks from the public had questioned why didn't you voluntarily towards this budget, and I did, and I was turned down the options that I gave in as far as salary.
Right,
So
the committee did not recommend what you guys volunteered.
right, and so I know that's going to get out there, but I think as you move forward, when you're talking about the referendum question, we have to be very careful on what you say. It has to be truthful. It can't be spun, but you also have to on the flip side of it, it really did paint a few departments in a light that they didn't voluntarily give up anything. These departments voluntarily gave up this. And if I had something to give, I would. Other than trying to be as diligent and fiscally responsible as I can with the budget. So I hope to, in February, have a budget report for you, because I'll know then what we will be getting for revenues from the state. And I believe all invoices are in, aside from one, but I included that in that $1,700 figure that I gave you. We have one invoice that will be processed in January going back to December. So
I wonder if we could suggest that the responses from the committees be included as appendices in the report, because the conversations that are in our report talks about what you guys
Yeah.
brought forth and what positions were talked about. And that may clear up any questions about any question that you didn't bring
Right.
anything forward, or, or,
yeah, I mean, I don't think here, I think I really appreciated at the last meeting, we had a really good dialogue, I think, between committee members and department heads. And I think the ad hoc committee did do a lot of work. There was a lot of effort put in there. So it's not, I don't want my statement being, saying, why did you do this? It's just, we have to be mindful of that. And especially when people are on edge, taxpayers are on edge, they're going to read it. And if they don't know what context to put it into, they will create a context to put it into. Their perception will become their reality. And the reality of it is, I think all the departments, in my opinion, are working hard to try to be as fiscally responsible as we can. Are there areas that could be done different? Yes. Is that going to hurt? Yes. Do we have to change what we're doing? Absolutely. The old adage, nobody likes change but a wet baby, is true. None of us like change. But I think we're going to have to do that. But again, going back to this, maybe putting those minutes in would help. I think that would be a good thing. So, other projects that we have going on is the Richland County Climate Resilience Group. Again, it's not a climate change thing. It's about bringing partners from around everywhere, business, industry, academics, county, city, just the public, to talk about, we know that Richland County is a beautiful county. We have class 1 and 2 trout streams. They also cause damage when we get lots of rain. How can we improve this? Get departments talking together, so if they're working on one project that might affect the other, maybe we can collaborate on that, spend a little less money, and make a better corrective action. So excited to see that move forward. We were able to secure the 2 grants, the PSAP grant and the GIS grant, for a total of $280,000. So, and I did finally get, this is for Barb, email back. They received our confirmation of that. So the licenses will get covered under the grant. Okay.
That's really good news.
So first draft of the letter to the chiefs on the assistant firefighter grant is done. I sent it to Melissa and Amber, who works in my office, just to check for grammar, punctuation, flow of information. So we'll get that signed off and get that out to the chiefs. Talk to a few of them, and there's some that are on board. Fire Chief Scott Gall was on board. Fire Chief Daryl Slama was on board. And I think I'm going to probably have one of my full-time EMTs help me with the grant, chasing down information with the fire departments. So moving forward with that. So those are good things. Those are
Really
exciting stuff. So questions?
Yeah, I have a couple, going back to the ad hoc committee comments. So including the department's responses as amended, is that what I want to make sure?
I was just thinking that might be one way to make sure it's clear to people that every department came forward with ideas of things.
Right.
And whether or not the committee recommended those, is another matter. Like, you voluntarily did, but we chose to not recommend that because we didn't think it was a good idea. But you did, and it's true. I think we do want to make it clear that
Right.
everybody came to the table with some really hard ideas of what could be cut.
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing, then, Darren, was the word voluntary.
Yeah.
I guess I'd like to either sit down with you and come up with some better language on that.
That would be
Make sure
awesome.
that's part of it. So
'Cause-
we did have a question from another department that came across and how some wording was done. And again, it was, there's no intention of any direction on that. When we looked at it, we said, oh, this makes sense. When that department looked at it, they said, yeah, it's not quite right. But that's why we had these conversations.
Yeah, when I use the term voluntary, I think back when I was a police officer. That person voluntarily surrendered themselves and I took them into custody. That person did not voluntarily surrender themselves, and now I had to forcefully take them into custody. And I just don't think that's fair for any of us, that we were willing to give whatever we could give, So I think it's just a matter of words.
Well,
and
sometimes
actions.
there's just no place to give, and that's the other, when you're a mandated service, there's things we just cannot.
Other than, the dialogue, the discourse, the sharing of ideas and thoughts might not be a dollar amount, but it's amazing how if you can get enough of us together, department heads together, where we can be pretty creative. And that in itself can equal a reduction in expense. So, any other questions?
All right, that brings us to approve monthly invoices and other sheriff department reports. So you want to start with the bills, or?
Yeah, I can start with the bills, and I guess I'll comment a bit on my budget.
Yeah, I was gonna do that too, so
Oh,
yeah,
you
go
were
ahead.
going to do that as well.
Yeah, well,
so-
yeah, you might as well start, and then I'll chime in.
So it looks like we're going to be coming in under budget.
Overall,
Overall,
there's some
yeah.
line items that went over.
There are some
but
lines.
Overall, yeah.
There are some lines that are going to be over. Some of them are going to be, I think there were like 10 and 20% under, roughly. And we had
I wasn't
revenues.
surprised by any of the lines that were over.
Yeah, and then we had a couple revenues that were that we didn't meet, but we also had a few revenues that we well exceeded. So, all in all, in general, I think we're gonna be giving back a decent amount of money this year
For the second year in a row.
for the second year in a row. What was that? Yeah, working short staff.
Yeah, I mean, our overtime went over, we always,
Yeah,
seems like that's just a normal
but we
over.
had a lot of a savings came in the form of wages and benefits for us is not having
Being
not being
short-staffed.
full staff. Yeah.
Um,
So
just a reminder to the committee, so, and when you're looking at the bills printout, anything that's in bold under the line item means that that line is over budget, just so, I don't know if I've said that out loud for the new committee members. So it looks to me like the care of prisoners is the line that, is the most over. I mean, all of these are related, they're all care of prisoners for the most part, except for advertising, but that's probably because we are advertising for positions more.
yeah.
And yeah. Okay, so any questions on the bills document that they've got here? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to pay the bills. Motion by Frank, second by McKee. Any questions, or concerns on the bills? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, bills are paid. Did you want to go into, so Amber emailed us last night or yesterday, the December, expenses, yeah. So, I just had couple questions on the, I mean, my main point was gonna be the same thing, that there are lines where we went over, but for the most part, so I don't know if you guys I'm assuming you guys have read these before. I like to look at the last column, which says percent, so you can see percent of the budget that's spent. And so the one question I had, because I believe that it just is because it's from donated money, but when I was looking at the K-9 unit, it says that it's minus 24,000, so it's, but that's donated
That-
funds, right? It's covered by donated funds?
That the minus 24,000
Yeah.
has been donations we've received. Yes.
Okay,
So
so that means that it's not that we're over budget by
It was
24,000.
something we did
It's,
budget for as a revenue and then received.
but then we
Yeah.
received the donations to cover. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear on that one, because that one's it was 999% over. Or 9,999% over. Yeah. That was really the only main question. I mean, the lines that are over are the usual ones that overtime is over, and there was some other little minor ones. I guess my only question is the same one for you. When you budgeted for 23, did you make any adjustments, or you pretty much couldn't really make any adjustments for what's over based
We
on?
added to fuel.
Right, we knew that, yeah.
We took it away for 24.
Yeah, for 24. We're
Um,
hoping gas prices
But yeah,
will
we
stay low.
did adjust to try and make things more realistic, but
Okay.
we went quite a bit over on those lines as well.
So so if it weren't for the staffing, the lack of staffing, do you think you would have gone over? In like a normal year, like let's just say we're fully staffed this year, do we think we're going to be pretty good? Do you feel pretty strong
Well,
about
I
your
think,
budget?
it's hard to say. I think our overtime would have been reduced. So it would have been close. I think it would have been closer to realistic to be
To being just like a
yeah,
balanced budget.
Yeah.
Time and a half versus regular time.
Yep. And then, we'd have less expense in training and stuff like that and staff time for training people.
Right, yeah,
So,
okay. Anyone else have any other questions about, I mean, this is not closed out, obviously. I hope everyone realizes that they get bills through probably February at least, sometimes March, before we really have a full. I think usually in March, I ask that they bring these again, just so we have a final picture of how the year went, how last year went. I guess so now that the referendum committee has made their recommendations, that also means that the cuts that you guys proposed, we have to do. I mean, one of them, the 85,000 is a no-brainer because we're just not paying
yeah, we're just not paying.
that. So that one's good. I do believe that the training one was not included in the number, so that's good. But all the other ones we're going to have to actually do now, just
Yeah.
to have that conversation. I can't remember what else was on there at the top of my head, but
The fuel
yeah, so
So-
hopefully gas prices
go down.
continue to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's another one where you can't totally control it. It is what it is. So
Yeah.
there was a couple other things on there.
I think we reduced some equipment
Equipment
lines.
lines, yeah.
SRT, we had planned continual increases. Drug Task Force, we had planned continual increases, and I think we took those increases away and even cut a little bit on top of those. So
So we'll have to
Yeah.
do our best to,
Yeah.
now that we've said we're going to do that, we're going to have to do it. Okay. All right. So do you want to hit your other report then?
yes, December monthly vouchers 39,940 and 28 cents. Number of jail bookings for the month was 43. Average number of inmates housed
Wow, look at that number.
39.76.
That's a big number. Oof,
Yeah.
How many do we have from state?
Right now, are we at 2? Yes.
Oh, so the rest of them is us.
The rest of them is us. Yep.
Oh, what's happening?
Well, so electronic monitoring is part of that number.
Oh,
Part of
and
that.
that's the highest number I've seen on electronic monitoring in a long time.
Yep. So we have
Yeah.
2 people. We're back to 2 people working on the electronic monitoring program. And so we've increased the numbers a little bit, and just the way people are sentenced and stuff like that, we've got a few more people out. So
So just to remind everyone, well, maybe you all know that they're staying at home with a bracelet on instead of sitting in our jail at our
Yeah.
expense. Yeah. And they have
So-
to pay to be
and
in
they
our
have to pay for
program?
that too. So and
Yeah.
then we have a revenue line for that. Yeah.
So increase that.
You know, it's
Well, we had a long conversation a few years ago though about making sure though that we have kind of set criteria, that we're not just randomly sending
and we
know,
do, but
for just to save us money.
without operating a Huber program, if somebody is sentenced with Huber and they have a job, there's an issue if I'm preventing them from earning an income. So
And why are we not doing the Huber program?
we haven't done the Huber program since
COVID?
COVID. So it's
Are we discussing that?
a discussion I would like to start having again.
And
Yes.
what is preventing us from?
Well, now it's gonna have to be it's space, and it's gonna have to be getting back into the swing of things of running a Huber, because we have people here, quite a few people here, who have never worked in the jail when we had Huber.
Oh, yeah, because there's
So-
like 7 or 8 new people in the last 3
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that makes
So-
complete sense.
Yeah. So it's gonna be a you know, for some people they remember what it was, but for a lot of our staff, it's gonna be a completely new way of doing things again.
Right. And I mean, that's because they leave and they go off and then they come back in. And so
Yeah,
you have
so
to make
there's
sure that there's the safety of.
Yep, the security side
security
of it
side
is
of it,
gonna
yeah.
have to be, we're gonna probably have to do some extensive training on, you know, what they're to do and not to do when people come in and out the door. So it'll be probably a lengthy discussion, but it's one that I do want to start having again.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted you. So you're at the average number of inmates.
Oh, yes. Monthly complaints, 263. Traffic citations issued, 58. Civil process served, 9, and 6 transports for the month. Average number on electronic monitoring is 11. Total calls for dispatch, 482 calls for service, 88 calls for EMS, and 96 calls for the police department.
Anyone have any questions on that report? All right. So is that everything under that, under invoices and other reports?
Yes.
Okay. So that brings us to committee discussion and possible approval of step increase for the sheriff's office secretary clerical assistant position.
So this has been
So we changed the title,
yes, we changed
right?
the
She got a title
Yeah.
change, but that did not come with a wage increase.
So we've been going back and forth with Carlson and
Detman,
Detman. Frustratingly going back and forth with Carlson and Detman, and not making any progress. the job description really isn't that much different from the assistant probate job description, with the exception of we don't handle court stuff. They will not increase the grade. Though the very last time we submitted it, they said that we changed an education requirement that never existed. So basically their recommendation and doesn't seem to be changing is that there should be no grade increase. We budgeted for a one-step grade increase. And they're not willing to do that. In talking with Clint, I brought up the fact that, well, we have the money, let's give her a step increase, and Clint is not comfortable approving a grade increase or a step increase beyond a step 4, because that's been a sticking point other times.
You mean him approving it without going through the commission of the board? Or
Well, so
without doing it
because I'm trying to
in
think of
general.
what exact document it is, but there is a county document that says that we will not increase people above step 4 unless you work for Pine Valley or, so Sue's at a step 4, which is a step 8 is market value. She's a 31-year employee. And so she has really no foreseeable upward movement without a step increase. So I guess to talk on that some more, we have a wage schedule that goes, I guess it goes now from step 2 to step 8. And I mean, what do we tell people maximum is? Because right now maximum for anybody other than Pine Valley is step 4.
And why can't we increase above step 4?
Because the county says because the county board has made rules that say we can.
I don't remember that rule.
It's in the
It's in the employee.
It's the employee, is it the employee?
What's the point of having more steps then?
That's my question.
I
And that's what Carlson, Devin, too, that's their issue with doing the grade increase. They feel that her position is in the correct grade level, and that if in that grade level she's in, if they would increase up to the step, it would bring her up to the market value where she should be at for her years
so
of
what
experience.
step would she need to go to step 5?
Well,
Or-
she's at step 4. I mean, like I said, we budgeted for an entire grade increase. Even putting her at step 8, we'd still be under budget for her wages.
So they're saying that her position description hasn't changed enough to qualify for
That's
a
what they're
grade increase.
Correct.
So the next option would be to do a step increase or some sort of
Their recommendation
steps.
is that you should be following the step increases, which she's according to I'm trying to think if it's the employee handbook or what it is. But she's maxed out at halfway through the wage schedule.
Does this process include tenure of service at all?
We don't
No.
have that.
Why do we
If
not?
I've been in my position for 27 years, just like Sue. I leave tomorrow and 6 months later, the next person will be making what I make.
So clearly so this is.
We
this
need to do a
sounds
little
like-
research on
This
this.
sounds like a bigger issue than what we should be tackling here.
It is.
This sounds like a finance.
I'm here fighting
committee.
for Sue.
Right, right.
But there is a much bigger issue than.
We could bring this as an example to finance. I mean, we could make the recommendation from this committee to bring this to finance to actually talk about why and how we're not, or why we're not.
So, but what I'm asking
rewarding
for
longevity.
specifically is that we make a recommendation to finance to increase her pay above. I mean, I say step 8, she's now into her 32nd year employee. I would think that a person who's been here that long would have maxed out their pay scale, but that's probably a broader discussion than we should just have here.
It is. I mean, I think we can make all the recommendations we want, but I think it's still going to have to go through finance, and we have, and maybe that's the point at which we need, because I wish Clint was here, but is he sick again today?
He's out of the office.
Is he again today? Yeah. I think that we can do two things. One, we can just today make the recommendation to send it to finance Or we can have an in-depth conversation with Clint about exactly what the issues are so that we can make a very clear recommendation. Or we can just send it to finance now and work that all out at finance. It's up to you guys how you
I mean,
want
I
to.
guess I would like to see the potential of step increases for Sue to go to finance.
Today.
That's my request. I would like.
And then we'll
I would
figure it
like
out
to
at
see step
finance.
increases For that, I mean, there's other people too that I
Well,
feel are
see
deserving
that,
of these
and
step
that's the
increases.
question that in my mind is I would like to, I suppose we can, I'm just trying to think of the most efficient way to get this actually moving forward, because I think that there's probably more than just the two of them in this same boat
Yeah.
that
Well,
we
I
should.
think the original intent, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, of the wage schedule was that every other year somebody was supposed to see a step increase. And nobody's gone, I shouldn't say nobody's gone beyond the four, because there are departments who have gone beyond the four. But most of the departments have not. I have staff that are at a step 5. That's because a step 4 would have been a pay cut for them
When they originally did the wage study.
came out, yeah.
Okay. Would someone like to make a recommendation?
I would
Or
make that
motion?
recommendation. It goes, or motion, it goes to personnel and finance to sort this out. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I will ask Clint to come up with a list of everyone who's affected, so we're not just, I'd like to fix everybody at once instead of just fixing one person. We'll have to see
Exactly.
how budgets
I know
fall.
that Clint did make the recommendation that everyone was gonna get 2-step increase with their wages.
Right, and then we just switched it to a 5% raise across the board and no step increases, correct? So it had the same effect money-wise, but it didn't get you a step, it didn't change the steps.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by McKee. All right, so the motion is that we are sending the recommendation to finance that we review a step increase for
Policy.
that position, but then also policy in general for the county at
Review
large.
the policy in general,
Correct.
factoring in tenure. I mean, it's just,
Years of service should matter. Otherwise, why are people staying this long?
we're not the
Yeah,
lone
I agree.
rangers in this. I've heard people from Rockwell and other factories around town that are in the same boat, that in order, because of the employee shortage, they've given these incentives to get people to come on board.
Right, and then you're,
And so some people at Rockwell have been there 25, 30 years. Somebody coming off the street, 1 week experience, making the same money. Now that doesn't sit well.
and it
So we're
shouldn't,
not the lone
and it
rangers
shouldn't,
here.
yeah, it shouldn't. But, yeah. Right, and
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I kept saying, your tenure in service is worth something. You want to keep people around, they've got to have an incentive.
And everyone's always talking about the cost of having to replace people. And if you want to keep people, you need to reward them for staying then. I mean, this all comes back to, but at least in your case, it's budgeted. So I don't want hers to get lost in the shuffle if there's other positions where there's nothing budgeted and they haven't, we don't have a mechanism to do it. So we'll try to separate that aspect of it out in that you did budget for an increase and that we do have the budgeted funds to do that, because that will be a sticking point for sure if it's unbudgeted.
One other thing, somehow, I don't know how you'd put it in there, but some people are motivated more by increase in vacation time than they are wages.
We have had that discussion as well.
It has to be looked at as a whole package. It really does.
Okay. All right. So I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Item number 14, committee approval to advertise for jailer dispatcher positions for the sheriff's office. How many open positions do we have?
2, so here I am. again.
Male and
That's good.
female?
Very good.
Male, female?
Both female, one could be filled either way, and one would have to be a female.
Female, okay.
Yeah. Yep. So.
And we've used up everyone we had on our list, because we
Yes.
hired Hayden and Braden, or not Hayden,
Zane. and Brady.
Zane and Braden.
Yep. Yeah, so we, yeah, we're down 2 again and need to get those filled.
Okay. So you need a motion from us to.
Motion to hire.
All right.
Second.
Yes, advertise.
Advertise. So we will have to go, I assume, once you get people, and then you'll set up a time for us to interview and all that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so I have a motion.
I would second the motion to advertise.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. You have our permission to advertise. Item number 15, committee approval to let Sheriff's Office retain monies awarded from the Alert Law Enforcement Challenge.
So I mentioned this a few months ago.
You won second place, right?
Yes, Deputy Repno got second place, which we got the check a couple weeks ago for $8,000 for his second place finish. So
Does he get money as well, or?
he did win money as
Yeah.
well. Yep. Yep. He, we had talked about some ways we could spend the money. We haven't really settled on an idea, but more importantly, before we make too many plans with it,
You need to actually be able to officially accept it.
we want to make sure that you guys will allow us to use the money for whether it be equipment or training. I didn't want to make too many set plans for it before we knew where the money was going.
Right. So we need a motion to allow them to accept and utilize that money.
Make a motion.
All right, motion by voice. Do I have a second? Second by Frank. I would be interested just in knowing when you figure out how you want to spend the money. If you just want to let us know, like
Yeah.
what you think would be the best use of that, not just sticking it in the budget for something boring like paying the bills.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you want to try to do something.
Yeah,
kind of
equipment or training.
some sort of
There was talk about maybe making some upgrades to the squad room as far as like something.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah.
So, but yeah, we'll bring back to you what we come up
You
with.
determine.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. You can thank
Yeah.
the deputy for us for
So-
bringing in extra money for you guys to utilize.
I know, it just kind of like as an example, Iowa County has placed a number of times at this competition, and they've like they bought new weapons. Like they have department issued handguns. They bought new handguns for the department. They've upgraded rifles. They've, they had funneled it into training for specialized training.
Nice.
So I don't know if we'll place multiple times, but we'll try.
Right? Yeah. All right. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And you can thank him again for having
Will do.
brought that extra cash into the department. All right. Item number 16, further discussion on contracting deputies for outlying villages.
So I don't really have much more to discuss on this.
We're still at 5 hours for CAS or
No,
3 hours? 3
yeah.
hours for
So
CAS?
I'm continuing conversations with them. I really have no worries about covering 3 hours a week for Casanova. We'll be able to do that. But I have spoke with them both about the contract that I had provided them as a sample or as a draft. It implied one deputy, that they would be getting a specific assigned person. I have went back to both of them and explained that that's probably, for CAS, that's probably still doable. For Lone Rock, not so much. That it'll probably be broke up between a few different people in order to meet the hours, and it may include a combination of full-time or part-time staff.
So you are you moving forward with the Lone Rock on the idea that you're not hiring an additional person?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm also, in addition to that, it set a specified amount for the year. I'm going to talk with Michael Windle about writing a contract that is less of a specified amount for the year and more of services rendered, paid for services.
Certain the specific services they're looking
So
for.
if we, for
Okay.
whatever reason, were to become short-staffed for a period of time and we cannot
Do
meet
those
our current
services.
obligations, that they don't have to pay for it, and we're not going to just
Bill them.
eliminate the
for-
contract because of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds, I mean, at least we're able to help them
Yeah.
with what they need.
Yeah.
Not to the extent they probably want, but
And
it's a start anyway.
And in talking with Lone Rock, I'm actually going to meet with the village board here soon, but they seemed less worried about having one specific officer. Yeah, it would be nice, but really what we want is the extra coverage. So,
Okay, good. All right, that brings us to radio tower project updates. How is it going? Is anything happening? Want to answer that question?
things are happening, but maybe not at the pace we want them to be. What I think what we're in right now,
Are the
we're
locks
having
still
our,
holding everything up?
our weekly meetings. We're one of our tower vendors in the area came back with, I'll just say, an outrageous price for a lease, which is more than almost 5 times what our most expensive lease is currently.
Nice.
So unless they made a mistake, we're going to have to look at some
A different tower?
different towers, or at the price they quoted us, it wouldn't take us very long to pay off a tower if we owned one ourselves. So,
that
my
would be
hope
building a
is
fourth
that's not
tower?
the public safety rate. That's the, you know,
Commercial rate?
commercial rate,
Yeah.
but,
Which area? You don't have to tell me which tower, but which area?
No, it's all the towers.
Oh, all the towers?
yeah, but the two, we were looking at 2 of their towers specifically for the project in the Ithaca area and Blue River area, your area. And so,
I think that we're gonna find it becomes manageable. I think that if Clinton's suggestions had to be taken, that we take them.
All right. So what about the door lock situation?
so that's another
Or door
thing
controls,
that's
I
been
mean.
moving at a snail's pace.
We're gonna meet on Tuesday.
Yeah, we're meeting on Tuesday.
Because my recollection is we were hoping to have dispatch consoles coming in anytime now, right?
I mean, they're in Madison. Is my
Right, but I mean
understanding.
installed in our
Yeah,
here.
but that's the issue, is that's the holdup, is
The
things-
locks, right?
Things have not been progressing with
controls?
the locks. I know Mike is working on it. I think Mike is frustrated as well.
Is he
That-
frustrated with the person? Because
He's
wasn't he
frustrated. with
passing the
his own
ball?
company.
I was going to say, wasn't he passing that to
Yeah,
someone else in his company?
yeah. So,
We got a reply right away, so we have the meeting set up for Tuesday.
okay.
And that meeting, we think something will be resolved and we'll know what the cost is
I
going to
think
be?
we know the direction we want to go, then I think we will start moving in that
Are we
direction.
still thinking the cost is going to be exorbitant?
No, because Mike said very different numbers yesterday to us.
Yeah.
We'll have to see.
We'll have to see.
I'm afraid, Mike said the same numbers that we were expecting
Okay.
yesterday, not the ones
That we
were
heard
heard.
other, okay. All right, so you guys are keeping that fire lit?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
like I said, we have a weekly meeting on it. There's constant discussion on it. It's just not moving as fast as I think.
So I
we hoped.
think I'm going to ask that Mike come to the next meeting and give us an update of where things are at. I'm feeling like I need to put a little pressure on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's not so much, and it's not so much Mike, I don't think, and it's not so much GenCom. It's what it is. It's the jail controls that are slowing us down.
But whatever, I mean, he's
Yeah.
still responsible for making sure this project moves regardless
Yep.
of if it's his own company or not. So I'm
Mhm.
losing a little bit of patience with the whole thing. So I will contact him and I will probably ask for a conversation with him like this week, but then I'll also make him come to the next meeting to give us an update of where things are at and
So-
an explanation as to where they're not at.
So I did, at your recommendation, I did call and talk to Mike Day
Good.
about the door controls that are included in the package.
Mhm.
And he said that they were working on 3 different options with that. The one option was pretty much off the board because it was so expensive. They were looking at another option which was less expensive, is a hybrid type. And then they were also looking at the possibility of adding a intercom module slots to the existing radio console project. And he was going to be working on some pricing for that from the radio vendor, which was GenCom at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that that was part of that conversation.
It was, and I think we've pretty much, we've kind of ruled out the adding the module to the dispatch council for the sake of the conversation we had earlier today. Is a big component of it, is if we separate out jail and dispatch, then if dispatch leaves the jail, then all those intercoms then leave the jail with it. So I think what we're looking at right now is more of like a commercial access system where it integrates the intercoms, the door controls, the few controls we need, and then the cameras. So
So I would, in that discussion that you have, I would ask you to look at adding what the cost would be for adding that intercom console to the existing console, because you can add additional consoles. And if you do separate, you're just going to add a console into the jail section that would also then handle everything if need be. It would handle the doors, it would handle the intercoms, and the intercoms could also be handled. And you're just adding a remote station at that point. So cost effectiveness of that, I would encourage you to look at that piece of it also. And for that matter, a backup unit of like that could be put at the police department or whatever. It's an added expense. I know it's not in the project right now, but it might be a cost-effective way to look at it.
So I believe that the plan right now is for us to go to the county board to ask to borrow the money, because right now we've gotten permission to go ahead we did the county board approval where we could borrow the money, but we haven't actually borrowed the money. And I believe that May is our goal for when we're going to borrow the money. Yeah. Mike had said to me that he felt that no later than January 1st, he would know for sure how many towers we're going to need. So it's interesting that we don't know that. So which is even better that we aren't borrowing the money till May, because I do not want to go before the county board without knowing exactly how much this is going to cost. So by May, I'm assuming that that we have plenty of time to still figure this all out, but I'm going to start putting the pressure on because I want to know exactly what's going on by the time we get to borrowing that money.
with what came back on these tower sites that we're hoping to lease, we're really just not going to know how many towers we're going to have. I think we know how many towers we need. We just don't know how many towers we're going to end up building at this point.
Right. My last thought I heard was 3, but maybe 4 was the last thing I heard.
It just depends on what we can do with this leasing.
Yeah.
And
Okay. All right.
So flip side, maybe if we build our towers, we can lease space on them and
for less than what
generate
they're
revenue
doing
for the
and
project.
Right. Charge through
Yeah.
the nose. Yeah.
I know Sauk County does that to some extent, where revenues from their towers
Why wouldn't we?
pays for radio system maintenance.
If we're building towers, why wouldn't we rent out
Yeah.
and make some revenues off of it? So, okay. Anything else on radio tower projects? Hopefully next month we'll have some really solid numbers on the door controls and number of towers. That brings us to mapping, radio system, and squad updates. I know there was a squad. Do we have vehicles on order? Where are we at with vehicles?
We have our 2023 vehicles that are on order.
On order, and we
Yep.
have our 2022 vehicles are on the
They're
road.
in service. Yep.
In service.
Yep. So,
Well,
well-
this is one of the nicer looking squad that I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, so all we're left with actually in use, as far as for patrol purposes, we have one squad that's over 100,000 miles. We have a second one that's getting close, but all the other ones that are over 100,000 miles, those are either our backup squads or training vehicles.
Good,
They're looking up.
right? I mean, we've finally kind of met what we've been shooting for the last 5 years. Okay. I have a question about mapping. So I mean, you guys are certainly aware. So the GIS position in the zoning office, Lynn retired. And I'm looking at you, Bob, because I have a question specifically for you. Well, and actually for all of you. So one of the things that has become abundantly clear with the vacating of that position is that nobody seems to really know. I asked as chair of land and zoning what the process is for like when a new address comes in, what happens? Who touches it? Where does it go? Who has to make sure? How do we make sure there's no mistakes? And nobody, certainly the zoning office cannot answer that question. Lynn left a brief email saying these are the kind of things that I do for us that we've been using to try to come up with some sort of contractor that we can use to fill the gap because we haven't been able to fill that position. My question is, I don't know how to get, I mean, and we've had this conversation too, to say I'm frustrated is probably an understatement. I can't believe that we don't know the steps of how a number gets from, coming in with a new address to where it has to go every little department it touches because it touches many places.
Oh, yeah.
And someone brought up to me a couple days ago that, like, who's doing it in the sheriff's department now? Because it used to be, like, what you're part of.
John does it in my department.
John does it now. That's what I thought too. Although when I asked that question, he didn't say that he was the one that does that. So
He doesn't feel comfortable speaking up in the, I've kind of,
would be so helpful.
I know. And so we've taken over the MSEG stuff at ours, but there's still a piece of it that's not clear. And what we don't understand, and the problem that's come up and what Crossroads is really showing us, a township will hand out an address. And they may not be consistent on the road name.
Oh, like if it's spelled or it's
The-
street, road,
Hi-
Panu.
Yeah. And that's not our zoning department.
Right, right.
That is on the townships.
Yep. And that's who creates all addresses? The township is the originator?
No.
City, the county creates the addresses.
Oh,
No, that's,
The township names the
yes.
issue area.
Well, with a couple, 4 or 5 of them.
how many programs do we have that? So I've heard Crossroads, I've heard whatever whatever you just said.
And
I've
MSEG
heard-
is the Master Street Address Guide. It's what it's what a 911 call uses currently, not in the future, currently to identify what services, what police, fire, law enforcement agencies should go to that. So it's a database that is used.
And what is Spellman? Because that also does mapping, correct? That's your record. Okay. Oh my goodness. So I guess my question for this committee is, should I just ask each department to define what they need, what needs to happen for them to make sure that their piece is?
Go back to Clinton, because we had a meeting. And we did
He
this.
was just there. He was at the zoning meeting with me when we were trying to figure this out.
Because we sat down with Mike and Jason and Clinton and I and went over this like a month ago.
Did you feel like it was answered? Like
There are a lot of
that
polls.
somebody
that-
actually knows from A to B how it all?
No,
you think-
because
Okay. All right, I'll continue. I'll talk with, I just didn't know if there was a way, like if we know from from this end, from what happens here, if there's a way to backtrack that helps us figure out all these steps and exactly what happens and what we need.
So I would be happy to sit with you and go through that. I've done it with this county for years before I retired, and I've been working with other counties. This is not a unique problem among GIS. It is something that the GIS grant that came out through OEC was one of the items, if counties wanted to, was to hire either a consultant or a project manager to identify that and build that and create those rules if you want, or flows. if you want.
Procedure, some kind of
Procedures.
procedure,
Yeah.
that you check off the boxes, making sure everything is done so we don't make any mistakes.
Absolutely, and because there's a number of pieces that flow in and out of that to get that information, including one of the challenges that has come up is the townships file their township road names with the state of Wisconsin, and they will file those incorrectly. They'll call it ABC Road when it really is ABC Drive,
Mhm.
and then that gets kicked back as an official record, which never gets checked by the county. So there's little things like that keep changing.
Do you think there's a
Well-
procedure out there, sort of someone already has a template where we could just fill in our specifics of?
Yeah.
Like a flow chart of, okay, here comes in this, thing, and this is everything that has to happen after it's done.
Yeah, so the organization that kind of heads that up and gives that direction and also built it for the 911 platform and has the schema for that is Wisconsin Land Information Association, WLIA. WLIA has a subgroup that deals just with that. And they are, I work with a number of them. They're very, very attuned to this problem. And they also realize that each county has some of its own unique things. Just for example, Dane County will pre-address even before houses go up. Because they have a development that they know is coming, they will pre-address it even before there's no houses there. So if an emergency service call comes in at one of those addresses, there's nothing there, and that's a challenge they have to
See,
deal with.
that's, for me, that's, you know, I mean, there's a lot of pieces, the GIS touches a lot of things, but if your tax bill is slightly wrong, or if something up, but for me, it's the 911 piece. Like, if they looking it up and it's not right, or not sending them in the right place, or there's some error when it gets to the 911 piece, that's the part that gives me nightmares.
Right. And the WLI standard includes the 911 piece, includes the tax roll piece, includes everything all in one mapping format. And that's what we're really encouraging the counties to start using. So
Okay.
we have
All
to
right,
talk
I don't want to
about that,
spend it,
give
yeah,
direction.
we'll spend some time offline. The only reason I brought it to this committee is that I know that mapping is, it's a very important component of how we provide our services. So, okay. So that brings us to 19, future agenda items. So we already have, we'll be talking about jail, we'll be talking about dispatch and jail staffing changes, jail administrator changes, potentially. Anything else?
I guess I would make the recommendation with the new funding that came out for the PSAP grant, that hopefully is going to be an ongoing grant project. I'd like to see that on this. We can make sure that we're
Like updates to where we're
updates
at
on that,
and making
then-
sure we're spending.
right.
When do we get the money actually awarded?
Actually, it could start today. You guys, the word should be
Oh,
out
is it one
already.
of those where you bill
Yeah.
Yeah.
for what,
We have to pay for it and then they pay.
and then they
us
pay us
back.
back, reimbursement, okay.
Yeah.
Right. So if we could put that on there, because any pieces that come up in that project that maybe we should be looking at down the road, we should be ready for the next grant round to get those included in.
So the agenda item would be called PSAP and whatever what was the other grant?
GIS.
PSAP and GIS grant updates every month, and that's a good idea, because otherwise all of a sudden you can get to the end and we haven't spent or done what we said we were going to do, and so we don't want to be in that kind of boat. Is it for 1 year? Is it a 1 year?
Current one is 18 months.
18 months? Okay.
The next one coming out will be we're trying to decide how that's going to sort.
Okay. All right. So that brings us to jail inspection report and evaluation of jail staff performance. Closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parent 1C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Would someone like to make a motion to go into closed session?
I will make that motion.
Motion by Frank, second by Renish. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's unanimous vote for going into. I think I'm going to ask Stacy if you could step out. Okay, thank you.